Hello, class. We are so glad that we're getting to at least share some information with you. All of the teachers I can speak for say that we do miss being with you, though, and so we hope that you're enjoying some of the break. We know that you're probably bored if you're having to stay at home like we've been told to do. And so let's just do a quick lesson. I'm telling you, it will be very quick. We're talking about maybe 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more when you answer these questions. So let's talk about North Africa. We've already talked about maybe the overview of Africa with the 54 countries and the large desert, but let's give some information now about this portion of Africa called North Africa. Remember, Africa is a continent, not a country, and as a part of that continent, there are some countries that we're going to talk about today, beginning with just very quickly. I'll scroll through these 54 countries, Sahara Desert, size of the United States. I don't want to give a whole lot of information here simply because time. We don't want to take up a bunch of your time. A lot of gold and diamonds, 800 languages spoken on the continent. And so here are the 5 countries that we want to talk about of North Africa, the 5 countries of North Africa. We're going to start with Morocco. Let's start by talking about Morocco. It is a very wealthy country. And surprisingly, it's one of the few countries that do not have a lot of oil. It's the only country in North Africa that doesn't have a lot of oil. So when we think about it, though, the wealth, you think about places like Casablanca. Maybe you've heard of a place like that, and it even sounds wealthy because of our culture helping us understand the importance of its wealth there. It is an important producer of fertilizer and exporting that. Some of you may take a guess that with all that coastline on the Mediterranean, on the Atlantic, all that coastline also produces fishing and tourism. There's where some of their other wealth comes from, and so we can expect that to be a part of it. And again, a lot of wealth there. The second country we're going to talk about is Algeria. Algeria is the continent's largest country. The continent's Africa. The country is Algeria, and this is the largest country in Africa and the 10th largest in the world. You're going to see this theme throughout the northern part of Africa, much of the western part of Africa. There's a lot of conflict between Islamic extremists and the government, and it's been constant for a very long time. The conflict comes because Muslims that are very extremists, not your mainline Muslim that some of you know here at school, there's conflict because they want to take over the government. They want to set up a state to where Islam is the religion in that country, and they want to take that government over. Oil and gas is abundant in the country, which is a very good thing to create wealth, but when that wealth is created, it's yet another thing to be fought over in these countries, okay? The third country we're going to talk about is Tunisia. Tunisian women have more rights than others in the region. And guys, religion is just a major theme throughout the region of North Africa, throughout the region of West Africa. And you may consider that it's a major issue in a lot of countries. And here, this is a part of why women have fewer rights in West Africa, although they have more in Tunisia, is because within that religion, you see that women have fewer rights. And the way that it's written in their holy book is that the man is in charge. And the fact is, many world religions have that, though. They have close economic relations to European countries. And you might see why. If you look here and you understand on this portion of the screen, Tunisia is close to Europe. And so they're going to have close economic ties. And the coastline, again, if you notice this coastline, Mediterranean Sea, you notice that there is another reason that they may have a little bit more of an economic asset, because tourism and fishing is going to also be large for them to be able to make money. Libya will be the fourth country that we talk about. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi is a major figure in the history of Libya. He came in power in 1961. He ruled that country until 2011, and so he was a dictator, and he was an extremist, and it caused a lot of trouble for their government. Since that time, there has been political and religious unrest. In fact, you may have heard, you might have been in fifth grade or so, the migrant crisis that happened here. Notice how close Greece is to Libya. And you'll also notice that Italy is very close to Greece. What was happening, people with the threat of violence in their towns would find their way over to the coast, and they would find their way over to Greece or Italy. This did cause a problem in Europe, though. You may remember seeing some of the news, if you watched CNN then, that people were finding a way there, and it was a hard time for Italy or for Greece to find somewhere to put them. And so it ended up causing problems not only in the northern part of Africa, but also in Europe. Again, oil is abundant here. You're going to notice that theme throughout, except for in Egypt. 99% of Egypt's population lives near the Nile. The Nile River is a big deal in Egypt. You might remember last year from ancient history that the very first settlement of humans started because of a river. They gathered around a river and realized that was a place to live. We're going to talk about that as we talk about the Nile, as we talk about Egypt, and I want you to be ready to answer the question, why is a river so important? In this case, why is the Nile so important? But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Cairo is the capital city, and as you can see, Cairo, located on the Nile River, is part of why it is so crowded, is that is where a lot of people were able to find that had the necessities of life that they needed to have. And as we've kind of mentioned, it's a country with limited resources. I mentioned that they're not gold rich, they're not oil rich. They have the Nile, and that is the thing that keeps a lot of them going. So, with the Nile River in mind, let's visit just a little bit about its importance. First of all, it's the world's longest river. It flows northward through the eastern Sahara. So when we say northward, I want you to consider that it flows upward. It doesn't flow down like you might expect. If you're looking at a map, many times you might think, well, the water's got to go down because that's what it would do on my map. That's not how that works. It goes northward, and it flows through the eastern Sahara. Near its end, it becomes a large river delta that ends in the Mediterranean. It's a large river delta that ends at the Mediterranean. The river's water irrigates the farmland along its banks. In the past flooding of the Nile, it left finely ground fertile soil, and this fertile soil is called silt. It's just a very fine, and that would help the crops grow. However, today they're called the Aswan High Dam, and it controls flooding. It prevents silt from being deposited on nearby fields. So as a result, farmers have to use fertilizer to aid crop growth. East of the Nile River is the Sinai Peninsula, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, I'm going to give you some of the stuff that I think, and I'm going to want you to put this in your own words. Why do you think most of Egypt's population lives near the Nile River? When we think about it, why was that first settlement in the Fertile Crescent made around a river? Why was it in ancient Mesopotamia that the river was important? All the things that are needed in life can come right around the river. If you think about crops, they need water. If you think about needing meat, the animals that are making the meat, if you will, are needing to be fed and watered. You can feed them with the crops. You can water them with that water. You can fish there. Firewood can be made from that. Homes can be made from that wood that is growing right around that river. And so all of the necessities of life come from water, almost all of them. And so that water is very vital to what we would see as reasons to survive and the things that we need to survive. That's going to be all we talk about for today on Monday. I do want you to consider sending your teacher a good thing. Send an email. Some of you I know have documents out there. let's hear your good things. We miss you guys, and we want to know what's going on in your world, and we certainly hope that you'll share that with us.